resource manager, and I've been very much involved in the NIS since 2007. You will recall that in 2006, there was a countrywide consultation, and resulting from that, an NIS reform committee was established, of which I was a member, among 20 others. I have here with me the report. Nobody looked at it. Not a single paragraph of that report was implemented. I am not convinced we're going to do much better this time around. I think this exercise is something of a limbo. I don't think it is the structure enough to get the results you're looking for. It would be better that you put together, possibly resuscitate this reform committee and have a task force that look at all the options and all the suggestions that would emerge from these consultations. But because there couldn't be no record that many of us will regard as reliable of what you take away from here. So I would strongly wish to recommend, but I did a piece of analysis which I made available to the Office of the President since this debacle was reported, and pointed out to him that in the 2012 estimates, there are 20,000 public servants in which, for each ministry, and I can make the document available to you, are filled, they only record filled positions, over 20,000. And that is only for the budget agencies. Now, there seems to be a case for reconciling your register with those numbers. What you have is a disaggregation in the public service of traditional public service servants, contract employees of varying stripes and contracts, and then you have donor-funded projects, which each ministry has several of. And we don't know what the accounting is in that regard. But in that very budget, those estimates, you will find there are 40 statutory bodies, public sector bodies. I do not know how they are counted in your register. There's no indication of the numbers of employees, and that needs a serious audit. In addition, there are 10 what they call public enterprises, which will be people like the oil company, Ghana Oil and others. Again, those registers need to be checked. I have a lot of sympathy for the inspectorate, contrary to my friend. I don't think they could stand up to the employers who are the powers that be. But I was interested in the actuary's submission. I part company with him very substantively indeed. I think he concentrated on one side of the picture, and numbers don't tell you about the quality of life. So all those fractions that he mentions don't resonate. For one thing, if he had a proper accounting of the potential employer contributor to the organization, then he might find that the gap, what you say is the 60% gap, I suspect is wider than that. Not counting the self-employed. That compliance is the essential exercise to be carried out. You can't penalize people who have no prospect of earning a living. They're pensioners. And that concept is totally unacceptable. But let me say this. As a member of the NIS Reform Committee, I went to Barbados. I was sent there by the committee and looked at the Barbados NIS. They had just completed a countrywide referendum in which the civilians across the country agreed to raise the the retirement age to 65. Now, I don't know why here we have a problem with public servants being retired at 60. The cane cutting guy, Suko, retires at 60. Every other private sector employee retires at 60. In GPL, I think the retirement age is 65. And nearly all the public sector organizations are 60, including the Ghana Revenue Authority and the audit office, which is something government approved within the last 5 to 10 years. So no mention is made, and I don't accept your submission that you have no authority. You have the authority to make a strong recommendation in that regard. Indeed, if you check the turmoil in France last year or the year before, and in Britain to some extent, it was because they were raising the retirement age. In Britain, what they have done is leave it open. And what they have said, that you cannot retire a person on the basis of age. No employer can do that anymore in the United Kingdom. So all I'm saying is, well, one of the things I'm saying is that you have to start off, first of all, allowing public servants who might be your major client to retire later. Because the 5-year gap is unbearable for some people, particularly the low earning level. And they cannot make the contributions on their own between 55 and 60. As a consequence of which, if they don't have enough contributions, they lose their pension. So how are we helping them? So it is that quality of life concern that we must address. With respect to, there was a project that was contributed by donor agencies in which there was to be interconnection, a digital connection between the NIS, Go Invest, GRA, and the Deeds Registry, so they could link up on new investors being, and therefore employers coming on board, and therefore you take action to make sure that they register as contributors. The Barbados model is quite online. You are allowed by law from the age 16, whether you're employed or not, to register online. When you get a job, you complete the application, inform the NIS, who then deal directly with the employer. So you don't wait on the employer to come to you. They are proactive, even aggressive. And you go to the employer and say, no, you have an employee. We know we have a lot of delinquent employees. That situation has now been compounded with the influx of foreign employers. And as I think of it, if the linkage ever comes about, GGMC should be included in that linkage, because that's where a lot of the employment is going. So my actuarial friend would not be aware of those economic and social developments, and that is something that has to be taken into consideration. So I come full circle and say that, having spoken what I have to say, that there is a strong case for us doing this in a much more structured manner, and get those recommendations thoroughly sorted out, and have a conversation, a structured conversation with the management of NIS. But I have a lot of sympathy for some of the strengths they have, the weaknesses they have endured, not of their own making. And so I will rest my case for the time being there.
9.3% is apportioned to pensions, 1.5% to industrial benefit, and 2.2% to short-term benefits, which include sickness and maternity. What I find very interesting is that there were some good interventions in terms of medical care, spectacle care, dental care, and so on. But it is unfortunate that these interventions are not supported by revenue intake to balance off here. What I'm saying is this: medical care is not a benefit. In the commercial insurance world, it goes along with sickness benefit or injury benefit. And if you examine the last three annual reports of the NIS, the last three available to me, in 2008, there were 22,261 claims of a medical care nature, which represented in total 14% of the benefit exposure of $7.83 billion. In 2009, there were 23,313 claims, representing 13% of the total benefit payout of $8.35 billion. In 2010, 22,416 claims, or 11% of the total benefit exposure of $9.4 billion. Now, I'm not a mathematician, and I know that there's a specialist accountant in the house. When you look at these numbers and you recognize that they're not supported by revenue intake, we were destined for problems a long time ago. And it is worrying for me that all these years have gone by and we have been paying out benefits. Yes, the interventions are good. Yes, they have a human face. And yes, they're necessary. But where is the revenue? Where is it coming from? And every housewife knows that to spend money that you don't have is a dangerous thing to do. And I believe that NIS has fallen into a serious predicament on account of what I believe to be a generosity not grounded in financial reality. It is true that there must be an increase in the rate of contribution if NIS is to be viable. But the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, Guyana is a very highly taxed society. And if you look at the employer, PAYE, VAT, and NIS, you're taxed 54.53% of your income. And if you look as a self-employed person, you're taxed 60.83% of your income. So the question is, where again do you find the balance? How do you reconcile an increase in your contribution rate against the almost penal tax position of Guyana? My recommendation is that you need to, obviously for the viability and sustainability of the scheme, go in the direction of increase of your contribution rate. However, I believe that such a review must come in tandem with a comprehensive tax reform. A comprehensive tax reform that looks at VAT and looks at PAYE and assesses it to determine whether in fact the Guyanese worker is not overtaxed or double taxed. And at the same time as that rate goes up, there's a relief on the other hand as far as the taxation is concerned. I recognize that there's no lighting, and I know that they are my seniors. I wear spectacles, but I'm not as senior as some of my friends present. But I want to look at what Mr. Terry Thomas said with respect to strengthening compliance, if I may. You cannot strengthen compliance at the expense of your traveling officers. Traveling officers of NIS have been benefiting from the same rate of travel for more than 20 years. Traveling officers of NIS have been promised duty-free concessions. They have been, I don't know, but those promises have been elusive. Commuted allowance has been stopped for more than 20 years. The working conditions are not what they ought to be. I invite anybody to visit the compliance office. It's hot. The lighting is poor. There's no available drinking water for employees or visitors to the section. You have to start by cleaning house if you want to strengthen compliance. And you have to provide for your officers the kind of backup services that they require: transportation, communication, and a comfortable working environment.